Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Championship Leadership Podcast. And today I'm really excited. We have Andrew Kaplan. He's out of New York. Shatter the Mold podcast and his two most recent books, which I think we're going to kind of get into because they really play into each other really well, is The Last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, and as well as It Doesn't Matter What You're Selling. And so, Andrew, I just appreciate you being here and taking some time to be with us here today. Thank you, man.
Hey, Nate, the pleasure is all mine and really excited to share some value with your audience, man. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pumped that we're able to get this done. So the first question I do always like to ask, which is kind of just off the, I think there's been one podcast so far where it hasn't happened, but that's all right. We're gonna hit it today. Championship leadership. What's that mean to you when you hear that?
Hmm. Good question. I like that. I love the way you incorporate the name into the question.
Yeah, man.
I hear that and my brain actually goes in a lot of different directions. But if we're talking about like an instant reaction, it's
Yeah,
about leading to win.
yeah,
Because in
yeah,
the end, what other point is there to leading than to win? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to be cruel about it or you've got to kill the competition or anything like that. It just
yeah,
means that you want a good outcome because that we're going off on a tangent already. But if you're leading from a place of defensiveness and uncertainty and you're scared about losing something, you're already leading from a place of weakness. And that's not the way to go. So I hear championship leadership. I'm like, okay, we've got a real focus on actually winning and doing something about it, which I imagine would lead to healthier moves.
yeah. Absolutely. That's great. And it doesn't even mean you're beating anyone necessarily, right? I mean, if you're really sticking to you and yourself, your company, whatever it is, right? Whatever area of life that you're in, if you're focused on you and your goals, your outcomes, your vision, maybe you are beating someone else and maybe you're not, but like winning doesn't always have to be this win or loss type deal, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
not that I'm opposed to winning or beating anybody, because there's some definitely some great things that come out of that as
Well, I'm
well.
glad. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because simultaneously, and never from a mean spirit, but there also has to be a willingness to win. I think
Yeah,
sometimes people they might feel bad about someone else getting hurt, but like if your intention is not to hurt someone, you're just doing your thing, you're going to win, and
yeah,
that's just the way it goes. And you never want to feel bad about that because only from your place of strength can you be a benefit to others anyway.
yeah. Well, tell us a little bit more about you. Tell the listeners a little bit more about your story and how you've gotten to where you are today. You got the podcast, you got many books, but the last two that I mentioned here that we're gonna maybe dive into a little bit deeper. Like how did you arrive where you're at today, man? Let's
Yeah,
tell
wow.
us.
It's we'll have to start timing me for like the 5 hour mark, but
Yeah, I love it.
I'll try to go quick. Well, I mean, I'll say this.
Yeah,
I was an entrepreneur. That's sometimes I say that and I almost hear myself being pretentious, but I mean, come on,
yeah,
that's not pretentious. I was an entrepreneur at 21, 22 years old. Like right out of college, I got a quick job for like 10 months just to build up startup capital because
hmm,
I didn't know anything about venture capital or getting something from someone else. I'm like, let me start some money on my own. So
yeah,
I know what it's like to kind of run a business and be on your own at in society standards today, a very young age. And I've kind of taken my licks like anybody else. And that first business kind of ended in 2008. From that point, I kind of went back into a 9 to 5 job situation, but then made a lot of side hustles. So I'm kind of like all over the place, and I know what it feels like to be working for someone else, and I know what it feels like to be working for myself.
yeah,
And even when I'm working for someone else, I know what it's like to be middle management. I know what it's like to lead, what it's like to follow. And for me, my journey's just been about keeping my head above the water while pursuing my interests and really trying to come to a place where I'm really comfortable with myself and what I'm doing because, life can be really long and really boring if you're not fulfilled.
yeah,
So that's always been a goal of mine, and really I'm in a good place right now. Like the book I just the Last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read that came out like less than a month ago, and we're not even a year removed from It Doesn't Matter What You're Selling. So I'm getting pretty prolific with this stuff and really excited about releasing these books. And of course, about, sharing my views on Shatter the Mold podcast.
yeah. So, well, tell us like what does fulfill you? You doing what you've well, like it's yeah. Let's dig deeper.
Yeah, man. Well, it's so funny. And I guess you make assumptions that you're kind of speaking for someone else when you say this, but it's kind of like, when I think when you get into business for yourself, then automatically you have to learn how to do sales. And sales lends itself to, positive thinking, positive mindset. So that we're going into the area of thinking strategically from a psychological standpoint. So you end up learning about copywriting and marketing, but also you end up reading books like Think and Grow Rich, and then
Yeah.
you end up reading something like The Secret if you kind of go and you follow that rabbit hole. So it's really what jazzes me up is growth and expansion, and you know making helping people figure things out and sort through things so that they can kind of expand their own life, whether that's making more money or doing anything else that kind of feels like it's missing for them. That's what jazzes me up.
Cool, man. What's we'll get into it a little bit with these books. I know you mentioned in the beginning before we started recording, like these two really tie in very well to each other. So what is it about these two books that really tie in, and probably more importantly, like how can they really impact the listeners and the readers?
Yeah, and it's funny. It's kind of like a personal stamp of pride that they actually do tie in the sense that people, you would hear both books and you would hear what they're both about, and you're like, what could these possibly have to do with one another? And it's really the theme, and you're right, what we were talking about before. If you take something like marketing or sales, and then you take something like the law of attraction, the thing that they both have, the common thread, is that there's an overabundance of information out there, and people, by nature and analysis of paralysis, they end up over consuming and overwhelming themselves and not actually even being able to make moves. So it doesn't matter what you're selling, was kind of like this answer of like, listen, I know there's 1,000 marketing books out there and I know that they're all good. But if you're overwhelmed and you just want to be able to finally act, read this book. It'll give you the 6 moves that you need to actually sell and market for your business. And last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read was that same thing, because again, there's so many law of attraction books and people read them all, and they never actually take action and do like the manifestation exercises. So I wanted to use my marketing psychology through that book to sell people on the idea and reframe things of, here's how you actually do the exercises and how you actually enjoy them, because it's only through your consistency that you're going to do anything anyway. So the whole goal of that book was to get people out of their own way so that they actually could do the things that they've known about for years without stumbling over themselves and kind of like beating themselves up and never feeling like they get any traction or momentum.
Yeah, that's a big piece, right? I mean, people are so in their own heads, and we see that all the time, especially in what we do inside of the coaching and working with business owners and entrepreneurs, and it all starts there. And so that's an important piece to it. And then before they can even go and take the action that is necessary, that is required, it's, I don't know, it's like one of those age old things that I don't think is ever going to go away. Right.
It's not. And the reason obviously it's my own personal opinion, but I feel that I speak to it well. The reason being, I've been there just like everyone else. I know what it's like to procrastinate to the point where I hate myself. I know what it's like to kind of sit there staring at a computer screen wondering, why am I not taking action right now? I'm bored. I don't even want to like watch Netflix right now. I'm bored. Why? I want to do something. Why is it not happening? So because I've done such a deep dive and I figured out a few things along the way, like that's the kind of thing I like to help people solve, which we know
Yeah.
also, kind of lends itself into leadership, because part of leading is motivating, and part of motivating is understanding the mindset of the people that you're responsible for, and helping them get out of their own way without them feeling like there's resistance to the way that you're trying to lead them.
Yeah, I think that's a big, big piece to it when you talk about the leadership is, I think the great leaders, they're able to relate to the people that they are working with, that they're leading. And, if you don't have those experiences, then you can't have that. Or if you're coming from this place of like insecurity where you got to look like you're right all the time and like you have all the answers, that's so ineffective as well. And so I think it's so important that as a championship leader, like you do have those experiences. You have been there, just like you're saying, man, I've been there before. Like I've done the deep dive on myself. And so now I'm able to, like, when it happens, you have a little empathy for them, and then you can know exactly where they're at, but also, how to help them to move through that. And,
Yeah.
when you're a leader, championship leader, like it's getting a bunch of people to follow you in the same direction that you want the team to go. And it's done so many different ways by so many different people, and yet there's no one way to do it, right?
Exactly. And it's interesting. There's so many challenges when you talk about leadership, and you kind of mentioned a little bit along these lines as you were just talking. I think sometimes people, they feel like, how am I going to do this? I always got to look like I've got it together. And then they hear a thing like, well, if you're real with your people, they'll respect you more and they'll trust you more and they'll follow you more. And I've noticed, while that's good advice, sometimes people take it to a further extent and like, okay, if they see my faults, they're going to follow me. So let me unnecessarily tell them about faults that don't even matter.
Yeah, right.
So I think the happy balance with that is, when you screw up, you own up to it. But until the screw up happens, you don't want to intentionally bring something in the mix as a manipulative tactic, because then they're going to lose confidence without it like even being necessary.
There's definitely a line there, right? And
Yes.
I mean, that's where I think there's kind of the art of leadership, of just people just kind of know how to lead, versus like, yeah, I mean, you can become a better leader as well. You can learn how to be a better leader, but yeah, there's just some intuitive pieces to that, where the great leaders, they know where the line is, and they can kind of maybe manipulate it from that point. But yeah, don't just go and like let everything out to your team unnecessarily, right?
Exactly.
Who are some leaders, coaches, mentors that have really impacted you directly, indirectly, as you've come through life, and really more importantly, like, what are some of the things, the traits, characteristics that you've taken from each one of those to help mold you into who you are, the leader that you are?
Right. Well, it's interesting because I couldn't give you any names that would be associated with leadership per se. Like me, I learned so much from a gentleman named Eben Pagan, and some people are very familiar with him and some people aren't, but he was like this master marketer, and he took on a different name and went into like the dating advice space, and he's done so many things, and I've learned so much in terms of human psychology, because I think leadership is psychology. So he's a huge influence in that regard. Um, I'm trying to like, I've read so many random leadership books and psychology books that I couldn't even point out to the name. It's been like one big blur. So that's really the name that kind of off the top of my head. Most other people, they've been people in my life that no one else would recognize their name or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
the name's really not important. It's more
yeah,
so like, what are some of the things that you've learned from some great leaders that have impacted you, and how have you
right,
taken that and put kind of in your tool belt, right?
right. Well, the number one thing off the top of my head is definitely ownership. And because again, like, it's something that you can't fake. You can't fake whether you're actually owning something or not. If you pretend you are, people will see right through it, because people hear sincerity in your voice, and they also hear a lack of sincerity in your voice.
Yeah.
So I've definitely learned a lot about taking ownership. And the other thing is really, again, it's such a cliche, but I've learned just, being able to walk in someone else's shoes. And that's
Uh-huh.
even if you disagree with them. And I think one of the best tactics, especially here we are at the end of 2019, if you want to challenge yourself to actually see if you could walk in someone else's shoes, I want you to find someone that's on the complete polar opposite of your politics and try to legitimately see things from their viewpoint. So if you love Trump, try to see it from the person that hates Trump. And if you hate Trump, try to see it from the perspective of the person who loves Trump. Because if you can successfully pull that off, you're guaranteed to know that you actually know how to walk in someone's shoes, because
Yeah.
there's such polarization out there and so many narratives and so many opinions and viewpoints that no one wants to let go of. And it's like the ultimate challenge with the ultimate payoff.
Yeah, it's a great example, definitely, especially with the political aspect, especially with Trump nowadays and everything else, that people are very tied up in their beliefs, and you know who they believe in, who they don't. But it is such a powerful thing. We talk about this all the time. We call it the power of relating, and just really, when you can get to a place in life where you really are looking at things from other people's perspectives consistently, all the
Mm,
way around. Something happens, they say something, you don't quickly go to judgment, but you're just like, man, I wonder what had them say that, or I wonder what's going on for them. And as a leader, I think that's so powerful, because when you can do that, and you can kind of you can slow life down a little bit and take a step back and not just be constantly in reaction mode. It's just so powerful to be able to do that, because
yeah.
I don't know. That's definitely something that takes practice and some awareness to implement.
Yeah, and the good news and simultaneously the bad news is there's layers to it, meaning it's possible to see something else from someone else's point of view, but still not agree with them yet.
Yeah, you
You
don't have to
know?
take the truth on, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that you need to do is actually understand where they're coming from, because that's how you can understand how to communicate with them, which is the whole point. It isn't
Yeah.
about changing your mind, it's about understanding their mind.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk a lot about vision in the podcast because I think great leaders have not only do they have a great vision, but they also like, man, they'll execute, they'll move on that vision, and they'll kind of be a few steps ahead of the game. Like you look at football coaches, they're the greats, the Bill Belichick's and the Nick Sabans, they're always kind of like a little bit a step or two ahead of the rest of the competition when it comes to having the vision and staying fresh. Like what's vision for you inside of what you've been doing and what you're up to and the impact you want to make?
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought up football, because I think that's the perfect analogy or metaphor or whatever the right word is for the way this answer is going to be. Because if you want to score a touchdown, you could throw the ball or you could run the ball. You could do, like, there's more than one way to do it. In fact, you notice people, they don't do one or the other, they do both,
Yep.
successful teams or any pro team. So in terms of the vision, I think it's very important to, do a visualization exercise where you just have the end goal in mind, and you let your subconscious, which is one of the most powerful supercomputer ever imagined, it's going to put a lot of pieces together for you without you having to do it. And then simultaneously, you're also pushing the ball forward toward the goalpost or towards the end zone by trying to think more strategy and trying to think specific moves. So some people do one or the other. I say, you do both, because it's possible that through your daily visualization of the end goal, something's going to click in your mind that's going to give you a better step than you were thinking of consciously to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does that play into for you as far as like where you're going and where you're headed?
Right. So for me, like, my main vision right now, it's so it's almost silly, because when I get book sales, if it doesn't matter what you're selling, like, I'm grateful. But because I just did the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, I get so much more jazzed with that. And
Yeah.
I've got this literal vision of that's going to sell 1 million copies. Like, that's what
Yeah.
I'm going for.
Yeah.
And basically, I'm building a lot of my business through that. Like, my vision for 2020 is just to sell a lot of that book and use that content for that market to help those people, because those people are so predisposed to thinking positively. It really enables me and puts me in a good position to give them a lot of momentum. The other vision, like Shatter the Mold, like the podcast, believe it or not, I don't have much of a vision for that other than being open to having really interesting, helpful conversations for people who listen to it. So
Mm-hmm.
the huge motivation is on the book, and the loose, like, let's see where this goes motivation and vision is on the podcast.
Yeah. Great. How long have you been at the podcast?
I started this one in March, and I did like a test run a year ago, year and a half ago, on a different one, just playing around. So this one,
Yeah.
where I'm actually being more intentional and trying to
Yeah.
book guests and doing, like, I've been going at that for since March.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Love it. What's you know, I talk about this a lot too. Turning points, critical decisions, critical moments inside of your life.
Mm.
What is one or two? Usually there's, we all have them, and usually there's one or two that really stick out to people that just like, there was this critical moment where had you gone left instead of right, you could be completely somewhere different inside of your life. But yet, you took that road less traveled. You listened to the voice, you listened to your gut, whatever it is that you might call it, or you just believed in yourself, you had the faith, and you took that leap. Like, what is a moment inside of your life that you could share? Because it's just so powerful for listeners, because we all have them. Some of them might be in that moment right now and not sure what to do. It's just
Right.
so good to hear the people and after they've made that decision, they went for it and it works out.
Right. Well, so there's so many, and they're all huge. Like 99% of them are in the face of adversity, like overwhelming adversity. The one that really
Totally.
sticks to mind, and this, by the way, is why I'm so into my new book. And, like, even if you don't buy into the law of attraction, that's cool. I mean, it's all about, like, healthy mindset, and your brain's going to put the pieces together. But
Mm-hmm.
years back, when I ended my first company, within 3 days of having to pull the plug on that, my girlfriend of, like, over 3 years broke up with me over text.
Oh man.
It's like, what a rough week, right?
Wow. Yeah. Right.
And everyone responds differently.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, it's like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go full throttle with like these law of attraction exercises and methods that I know about, and I'm gonna go full throttle with my strategy of like getting out there and making money. So basically, I just made a comeback. I'm like, I'm trashing this company right now. I'm completely throwing that away, and um, I just basically went all in with so many things. And like within 3 months, I was in a new, better relationship. Within 4 months, I was making more money than ever before in my life at that point consistently. And like 6 months later, man, I had a completely new life. And through that, like I started working out. I got in the best shape of my life. I actually lost 25 pounds in 7 weeks without trying. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to lose
Yeah.
weight. I was just like, I was just doing martial arts. And it's like, that's the beauty of it that like learn from that is when you kind of just get fed up and you say like, I'm not stopping. I'm just going to like just go full throttle in a specific direction. Even if you end up like hitting your head against the wall and having to take a new direction, things are still going to happen. And you're actually going to wake up weeks or months later, like, oh my God, how did I accomplish X, Y, and Z? I didn't even see that coming.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's important to hear that because, in those moments, many times the decision, the other opposite decision is like, man, you could just allow it to just completely control you and your lack of movement towards anything. And I think you hear those stories more often than not.
Mm,
So yeah, it's important to hear that, and
yeah.
appreciate you sharing that, man.
And if I
What's
could share, I just
Go
want to share a
ahead.
little more of that nature so they give a little extra value just because I
Yeah.
don't want to front. It's not like I was in a good mood, man. I was waking up depressed every single day.
Yeah. No. Great.
It
Yeah.
was through that I like accepted like this is gonna suck for the next couple weeks or months. I don't care. And
Yeah.
I only say that because I think sometimes people hear that and they respond something differently and they're crushed. It's like
Yeah.
everyone's crushed. Keep
Yeah.
going anyway because like
Yeah.
there's the only thing you can do is work in spite of it so that you feel better sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, that's definitely important to know that, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, you're just happy and excited about everything else in your life, and you just like made this complete turnaround. So yeah,
Yeah, no sunshine and rainbows for a couple of months there, but it was fine,
right.
man. That's how it goes.
Yeah, and it's part of life, unfortunately. But we just know the more we equip ourselves, and when things are going well, we just know that things aren't always going to be that way. Whether it's a loss of job or it's financial hurt, it's illness, it's a loss of a loved one, whatever it might be, like those things are going to happen. And I think the more that we can prepare ourselves and equip ourselves and take care of ourselves and continue to grow, the more capable we are to really stand in those moments and handle them a little bit better as well. And
Yeah.
especially as a leader, that's important because man, when you're in the top of the ship, like people are looking to you to do that.
Yeah. And you're going to get challenges to your leadership also. And the person that's kind of coming up on your six, it's going to seem like they're on top of on top of the world and they're flawless, but they are struggling and they're crying themselves to sleep every night trying to figure out how they're going to get over on you. Like
Yeah, right.
never 90% of the people around you are very adept at making things look better than they are. And the
Yeah.
other 10% are making things look worse because they're drama queens. But
Yeah.
it's like don't be
So
fooled by
true.
that happy photo on Facebook because that couple that's like looks like perfect, they were
Hmm.
pissing and moaning and arguing 5 minutes before they took that shot trying to get the perfect lighting.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. Or the kids weren't cooperating or whatever it was, right?
Yep.
Hey, as
Exactly.
we start to wrap this up, like what are one or two things that you could share with us, the listeners, that they could take and implement into their life today to help them move forward?
So, I mean, the direction I'm going with, especially in the new book, is you want to find any way possible to enjoy whatever you're doing habitually. So again, like a visualization exercise. Some people do it because they think it'll train their brain to do better and get results. And that's good, but you also want to do it for the sake of doing it and feeling good. Whatever you do, make sure you're actually enjoying it because only that way is your willpower going to hold up and you're actually going to stick with your routine. So whatever you got to do to find a good way, do it. And the other thing I would say is just, be kind and patient with yourself. Don't beat yourself up because, you're all you've got. You're the only one who's really always going to like be there in your corner. So the best thing you can do is be as forgiving yourself as possible because you're going to make mistakes. It sucks to hear. And I don't like when people tell me this, but you got to treat it as learning moments because that's the only way you're going to get going in the positive direction anyway. So it
Yeah.
sucks, but you deal with it. And that's how
Amen.
life gets better for you.
I love it. Appreciate it, man. Thank you. What are a few ways we can find out more about you, your books, and everything else that you have going on, your podcast?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I mean, if anyone wants to check out the podcast or an easy link to the Amazon page for It Doesn't Matter What You're Selling, you can just go to shatterthemoldpodcast.com. And if you're interested in the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read, just search those words on the Amazon website and it'll come right up. And obviously, I wrote it, so I highly recommend both. But
Absolutely, man.
I'm hoping some that will give value to somebody out there.
Yeah, I love it. We'll get those linked up too for you, and so that they can find them easily. And I appreciate you being here today, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I had a great time, and I can tell that you know what you're doing, and I could only imagine how many awesome listeners you've got over there.
Yeah, thank you.